I'm your host Mike Davis, and today we're diving into some numbers that might ruffle a few feathers. But hey, that's what we do here, no sugarcoating, just straight facts. Before we jump in, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss an episode. And shout out to our sponsors at Athletic Brew, non-alcoholic beer that actually tastes good. Use code REALTALK for 15% off your first order. Alright, let's talk women's basketball. The headlines have been screaming about record-breaking viewership and how the sport is reaching new heights. But I've been digging into these numbers, and folks, we need to have an honest conversation about what's really happening here. So the NCAA Women's Championship game between UConn and South Carolina pulled in 8.5 million viewers with a peak of 9.8 million. ESPN executives are popping champagne bottles. The media is writing these glowing pieces about the continued growth of women's basketball, but is anybody actually looking at the context here? Last year with Caitlin Clark, 18.9 million viewers. This year without her, 8.5 million. That's over 10 million people who said, "Nah, I'm good."
10 million people.
That's not a small dip, that's a cliff dive. But wait, there's more to this story. Nielsen, the company that measures all this viewership data, they quietly made a massive change to how they count viewers. Last year, they were only counting 66% of US markets for out-of-home viewing.
This year?
They're counting 100%. So let me get this straight, they expanded their measurement by 34% and still lost over 10 million viewers? How is nobody talking about this? Let's look at some other numbers from the tournament. The final 4 games, Texas vs. South Carolina drew 3.6 million viewers. UConn vs. UCLA pulled in 4.1 million. For comparison, last year's Final 4 with Iowa vs. UConn? 14.4 million viewers. South Carolina vs. NC State was 7.2 million. These numbers aren't just down, they're cratering. And yet we've got these headlines talking about the second most consumed NCAA women's basketball tournament on record. Yeah, second to last year, which had numbers more than double what we saw this year. I'm not trying to hate on women's basketball here. I'm just calling it like I see it. The Caitlin Clark effect was real, and now we're seeing what happens when that phenomenon is removed from the equation. Listen to this quote from a recent article, and I swear I'm not making this up. It would seem clear that while women's college basketball is unlikely to return to Clark-era heights anytime soon, it is not returning to the pre-Clark norm either. That's what we call spin, folks. That's taking a catastrophic viewership collapse and trying to find the silver lining. Hey, at least it's not as bad as 2016.
Come on now.
Here's the cold, hard truth. More viewers were lost year over year than actually watched the championship game. Think about that for a second. The number of people who decided not to watch this year compared to last year is greater than the entire audience who did tune in. And I know what some of you are thinking, but Mike, the sport is still growing, these numbers are better than they were 5 years ago.
Sure, I'll give you that.
The 2021 championship game had 4.1 million viewers. 2022 had 4.8 million. Then Caitlin Clark arrived and boom, 9.9 million in 2023, then 18.9 million in 2024. Now we're back down to 8.5 million with an expanded measurement system. That's not growth, that's a market correction after a generational talent temporarily inflated the numbers. I'm not saying women's basketball can't continue to build an audience. I'm just saying we need to be honest about where things stand right now. The sport had a moment with Caitlin Clark that brought in casual fans by the millions, and most of those casual fans have now left the building. If I'm an executive at ESPN or a sponsor looking at these numbers, I'm worried. Because the trend line isn't pointing up anymore, it's pointing down. And I guarantee you the projections for next year aren't going to be pretty. Look, I know this isn't the popular take right now. Everyone wants to celebrate women's sports and talk about how they're taking over. And in some ways they are seeing growth. But we can't ignore reality just because it doesn't fit the narrative we want to believe.
The numbers don't lie.
10 million people disappeared from the championship game audience in 1 year. That's not a success story, no matter how you try to spin it.
And you know what? That's okay.
Not everything has to be constantly growing to be valuable. Women's basketball has a core audience that's probably larger now than it was before the Caitlin Clark phenomenon.
That's still a win.
But pretending like everything is still on this amazing upward trajectory is just dishonest. I'm curious what y'all think about this.
Am I being too harsh here?
Or do you agree that we need to call it like it is? Drop your thoughts in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter. Before we move on to our next topic, the disaster that is the Lakers coaching situation, I want to thank our Patreon supporters who make this show possible. If you enjoy content that doesn't just regurgitate the mainstream narrative, consider joining our Patreon community. $5 a month gets you access to our exclusive weekly Q&A episodes.
Allricht, so about These Lakers.
Frank Vogel must be laughing somewhere because the situation has gone from bad to worse. Let's break down why Darvin Ham has completely lost that locker room. Show continues. And that's all we've got time for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new uploads.
We'll be back tomorrow with our breakdown of the NBA playoff picture.
This has been the Real Talk Sports Hour. I'm Mike Davis signing off.
Stay real, everybody.